What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tomatito Boxing Show, your favorite boxing podcast. At least I hope it is. And let's talk about the fight card that we should be paying attention tomorrow. There's several matchups going on tomorrow, not super high profile, and neither is this one. However, there is really good matchmaking that has come about, and this is the Golden Boy card that's taking place in Las Vegas tomorrow. Of course, this is the big St. Paddy's Day weekend, where it's a celebratory, festive weekend all over the place, let alone in Ireland, of course. And Las Vegas is no exception to this. This boxing card is one that I really feel that you should pay attention to, and I'm talking about William Zepeda, El Camaron Zepeda versus Maxi Hughes. It is a Golden Boy event. It doesn't have the super high profile name. None of the cards do that are taking place this weekend, because they're lesser known fighters, up and coming fighters, prospects. But this one has some big implications, IBF and WBA implications, for that matter, in the 135-pound division, in the lightweight division. And this is a fight that you should be paying attention to, because the landscape is wide open now that Devin Haney moved up to 140. Basically, all the titles are in line, and the IBF and WBA have made this fight between Zepeda and Maxi Hughes a title eliminator for each of the respective divisions. Now, those titles being up for grabs at the moment, Shakur Stevenson being the only champion at the moment that has risen since Devin Haney migrated up to 140 and beat Regis Prograis. Shakur Stevenson then again, quote unquote, retired, if you recall that. So we don't know if he's active or not. We don't know if he's going to come back. He's been very active on social media, very actively saying that if Ryan Garcia, with all the issues that he's going through during this fight camp in preparation for Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson has thrown his name in the hat and wants to be the stand-in opponent for Devin Haney. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a great fight, because this should be a title or title unification type bout for the winner of this card. And potentially, if Shakur Stevenson decides that he is coming back, William Zepeda or Maxi Hughes would be great opposition for him. There is other opponents out there. And the division, although doesn't have super high profile names currently, it does have a lot of talent. A lot of talent. Golden Boy has talent. Top Rank has a lot of talent. PBC has a lot of talent in that division. And looking at this fight, I'm going to bring up the WBC page as I'm talking to you, because I'm curious. I'm curious to see what the WBC is, if the WBC is still listing Shakur Stevenson at the current moment as one of their champions, or if they have vacated. So I have it up here. Let me go ahead and see if I could find the champs page. So at lightweight, wow, this can't be right. Oh, silver titles. Okay. All right. It was throwing me off because I'm looking at the silver title listed as being the champion for the WBC was listed as Isaac Cruz, and it threw me off because I was like, wait a minute, when did he get awarded the full title? All right, let's see if I could find the main champion here. Lightweight, here we go. Shakur Stevenson still listed, and as of the recording of this episode, let me see when they updated this. This is this week. This week. So as of right now, Shakur Stevenson, February. Oh no, it's not this week. So this is actually fairly outdated. February 19th of 2024 is the last rating that they did. And as of February 19th, I mean, we're March 15th here as the weigh-ins concluded for Zepeda and Maxi Hughes at the time that I'm recording this. So this is February 19th, nearly a month. They're still listing Shakur Stevenson as their lightweight champion. William Zepeda listed as their number one contender. Remember, I didn't mention the WBC at the beginning of the episode because that's not up for grabs tomorrow. What's up for grabs is the WBA and the IBF. That's the title eliminator. So William Zepeda is highly ranked across the board in the lightweight division right now. And they have, as of this article that I'm reading right now to you, William Zepeda ranked number 1, Raymond Muratalla ranked number 2, who's going to be active at the end of the month on the undercard of Oscar Valdez, Liam Wilson, and Keyshawn Davis listed as number 3 for the WBC, Frank Martin listed as number 4, Edwin de los Santos listed number 5, who last fought and was last active against Shakur, and Maxi Hughes listed as number 6. So William Zepeda, the number 1 rank for the WBC, Maxi Hughes, number 6. But the WBC is not up for grabs on this fight tomorrow night. So both of these fighters are highly ranked, and that's exactly why I'm telling you should be paying attention to this fight. The current champions, as far as we know, the WBA has basically put that title hostage around Gervonta Davis's waist. And from my knowledge, and I'm sure you've read the same thing, he should be in talks or finalizing a fight with Frank Martin, which is going to be an amazing showdown if that happens. Remember, Martin was supposed to fight Shakur Stevenson. Then he ended up pulling out last minute. He took a lot of a beating basically through social media, and enter Edwin de los Santos and the snooze fest that we had between de los Santos and Shakur on that weekend where they were doing the inauguration for the F1 out in Las Vegas. What was it? Late October. So Shakur Stevenson, the WBC champ, he's basically your standing champion at the moment. WBO vacant. WBA vacant. Gervonta has the world title around him, but not the main version, the super champion, as the WBA considers. The IBF vacant. And George Kambosos is listed as the IBO champion, which we've talked about a lot in the last few episodes. That IBO title is considered the 5th most important organization, a title that has been awarded and won by some of the biggest names in the sport of boxing, both male and female. George Kambosos became champion of the IBO by lifting that title from Maxi Hughes by way of controversial decision in their very last outing. Kambosos and Maxi Hughes fought last year. I believe it was July of last year in 23. And that's when that came about, when that title changed hands. Maxi Hughes is no joke. Maxi Hughes, although has 6 losses to his name, we could look at his record and we'll break down his resume at the moment. The 6th loss he got at the hands of George Kambosos, and it was July of 23. I'm confirming right now. But let's look at his losses. He had his first blemish on his record about 5 or 6 fights in. That was against a fighter by the name of Ronnie Clark. That was a draw, a 4-round fight back in 2012. From there, he continued winning, and he suffered his first defeat against a fighter by the name of Scott Cardell in 2013. And then he got into this grudge match with Martin Ward. Martin Ward, a very good fighter in his own respect. when he fought Martin Ward, the first time that they faced each other 3 times. The first time that they faced off against one another was December of 14, and that fight ended up being deemed a draw. A 10-round fight ended up coming away as a draw. So the second draw of Maxi Hughes' career, and at that point, he already had 1 loss, which came at the hand of Scott Cardle. So he was 1 with 2 draws at that point. The very next fight, just 4 months later, they run it back. Maxi Hughes and Martin Ward get back in the ring, and this is another 10-round fight, and Martin Ward stops Maxi Hughes in the 5th round. His nose was obliterated. Martin Ward's jab was just on point that night, and Maxi Hughes retired on the stool. 5th round. They had a draw, and then he loses to Martin Ward 4 months later. Second loss of his career, and 2 draws up to this point. Then he continues on his winning ways. Then he faces off Martin Ward again when they fought for that British super featherweight title. And that was 2 years later from that loss that he suffered at Martin Ward from when he retired on the stool. This was 2017, and Martin Ward ended up getting deemed the victor on that night as he got the unanimous decision win on a 12-round fight against Maxi Hughes. At that point, he had his 3rd loss. 2 draws, 3 losses at that point. Wins 2 fights and then drops another one to Sam Bowen as he got stopped in the 8th round. Lesser known fighter. Loses to Liam Walsh as they fought for the European version of the WBO title. Lost a unanimous decision to Liam Walsh. 10-round fight. And it seemed like Maxi Hughes was at a crossroads in his career after that loss. He got back to his winning ways, fought an up-and-coming fighter or a basic and active fighter with a record of 2-5-1 at that time in Chris Pilkington, and continued to work his way up. After that was his tune-up fight. He ended up amassing some decent names on his resume. He beat Joan O'Carroll, who was a highly touted prospect. Beat Joan O'Carroll in a unanimous decision win, 10-round fight. A couple fights later, he beats Paul Hyland Jr. He beats Giovanni Straffen. He beats Kid Galahad, September of 22. Very good wins. All in all, after that loss to Liam Walsh, 7 fights in a row, 7 victories in a row, 7-fight win streak leading into the fight with George Kambosos Jr. He had found his stride once again. And he was going into that Kambosos fight on a 7-fight win streak as the IBO champion. He beat Giovanni Straffen, like I said, and that's when he became the IBO champ, defended the title twice, and this was the 3rd defense of his career against George Kambosos, where he puts the title on the line and loses a controversial decision where most of the world saw a George Kambosos that was off beat, off rhythm, off his game, who talked as if he witnessed and was part of a completely different fight post-fight at the post-fight interview. Of course he had to sell it, but he knew, and the world knew. Everybody watched a Maxi Hughes that beat Kambosos to the punch. Maxi Hughes likes to muddy the waters. Maxi Hughes likes to get in your face. He likes to exchange, but he's a very good counterpuncher in his own right. Tomorrow's fight's very interesting because William Zepeda is punches and bunches, all action, all the time. He comes forward, overwhelms you, smothers you, and doesn't stop. His stamina is second to none. And there was a message on X, a post on X that Shakur Stevenson had maybe about a week or so ago, where he was asking fans as to who his next opponent should be. Should he come back? Who would give him a good fight? Was something to that nature. And people were the obvious, Gervonta, Devin Haney, the obvious names. I threw on there William Zepeda. Didn't get a single reply. Got a couple likes. No one wants to mention this name. Camaron Zepeda is scary. Zepeda is smothering scary. And he's fun to watch. He's a lot of fun to watch. So Maxi Hughes is coming into this fight with the 26 win record, 5 knockouts to his favor, 6 losses, and we just went through them. 2 draws. The knockouts don't favor him. He doesn't possess a lot of power, but he puts his punches together fairly well. And all in all, we could consider him an action style fighter because he does like to get into exchanges and he looks for the action. He doesn't wait until he's fighting on his back foot. He likes to engage. He likes to muddy the waters. He likes to get in there and mix it up. And he's found a lot of success, including that IBO championship. And that's what he did when he faced George Kambosos, where George Kambosos thought that it was going to be a speed point scoring type fight, similar to what he's accustomed to doing, of going in, landing his punches, getting out of the way, getting on his bicycle, rounding the ring, then coming back in, pot shot, then back out. Well, Maxi Hughes wasn't allowing him to do that. Maxi Hughes was cutting him off, was engaging him, was countering him fairly well, and timing George Kambosos fairly well, and caught Kambosos numerous times. To where it wasn't the reason why it became controversial. It wasn't that he had very few moments in the fight. He was taking the fight to Kambosos, and people didn't know how Kambosos was going to pull this one out. But in the end, the judges did it for him and lifted the title from Maxi Hughes at that. A very spirited effort where the crowd ended up booing at the end of the fight when the decision was announced in favor of Maxi Hughes. Booing the decision. His 7-fight win streak came to an end, but here he goes with an even bigger opportunity in an eliminator fight for 2 sanctioning bodies, the IBF and the WBA, whichever one he's able to get his hands around and get into contractual talks with, should he be victorious over William Zepeda. How? I don't know. This is a huge uphill for Maxi Hughes, a huge step up in competition. 26-6-2 with 5 knockouts to his favor, going against Camaron Zepeda, who comes into the ring unblemished, undefeated, 29-0 with 25 knockouts to his name. Let's just look at some of the most high-profile names that he has in his resume, and maybe even within the last 10 fights. He beat Roberto Ramirez, stopped him in 5 rounds in a 10-round fight. Roberto Ramirez went into that fight at 23-2, one of the more experienced fighters. Not journeyman, but one of the better opposition to that at that point for William Zepeda. That was November of 2020. After that fight, July of 21, he fights one of the biggest names and biggest prospects in the lightweight division, which is El Finito Hector Tanajara. Tanajara went into that fight at 19-0 and was the favorite in that fight against the lesser-known William Zepeda, and that's the fight that put William Zepeda on everybody's radar. William Zepeda stops him in round 6 of a 10-round scheduled fight. Zepeda continues unblemished. He went in 22-0 in that fight to 19-0 in Hector Tanajara, and to this day, that's the only loss that Tanajara has on his record. The very next fight, he fought Miguel Contreras and fought him to a draw in an 8-round fight. And since then, November of 22 and March of 23, he's gotten back to his winning ways with up-and-coming fighters. He beat a 10-4 fighter in Antonio Mejia, stopped him in round 5, 6-round fight. He basically got back to groundwork, got back to let's just figure out what's going on here, because he suffered a nasty loss after being on an up-and-up. Remember, he was doing work. Hector Tanajara was a prospect that everybody was keeping an eye on. He beats Roger Gutierrez. He beats Emmanuel Rodriguez. He beats Juan Carlos Burgos. And then gets stopped by William Zepeda, who at that point, nobody really knew who he was. Then has a draw with Miguel Contreras, and then had to resort to going back down to basics, to the beginning groundwork of his career, and he's fought back-to-back 6-round fights. Against Antonio Mejia, where he was successful, November of 22, and John Arellano, who came in with a 10-2 record at that fight, another 6-rounder, and he got a unanimous decision win on that one. Tanajara starting to find a stride back, because it seems like he was just skyrocketing up, and he ran into the obstacle that is Camaron Zepeda. Zepeda beating Tanajara July of 21 gives him the first and only loss of his record. Goes on to fight a 24-4 fighter in John Moralde. Stops him in 4 rounds. Veteran John Moralde. Fights journeyman Luis Angel Villedas, a fighter who came in with 29-11 record. Stops him in 3 rounds. Rene Alvarado, big name, gets a unanimous decision win in an all-action fight. You know, the 2 Alvarado brothers are just all-action themselves. They love to mix it up. They make it into bloody fights, bloodfests at that. William Zepeda got the unanimous decision win over him. Then he fights Joseph Diaz out in San Diego, a fight that I got to attend. And you guys heard me when I was covering Joseph Diaz's last fight. You guys heard me talk about that fight. An amazing performance and an amazing sight to witness in person, that I was pulling for Jojo Diaz to get his career and get himself back into another title fight. I was pulling for Jojo Diaz, and I've been a big Jojo Diaz fan for years. And that night, I felt bad for Jojo Diaz, but I was amazed. I went home, went back to the hotel, just amazed with what I had witnessed from William Zepeda and the performance that he put on. It was smothering. It was like wearing a turtleneck sweater in 120-degree weather. He was just on him. There was no footwork that could have saved Jojo Diaz that day. Camaron Zepeda was just throwing punches from every angle and catching them. Jojo Diaz's head was just bobbing left and right. He would get caught with uppercuts and on the temple and on the nose and on the chin. Getting hit in the body. It was just, he just couldn't get away. Even then, Joseph Diaz made it all the way to the end, but there was no question as to who the victor was that night. And the rising stardom of William Zepeda that I got to witness firsthand. He then goes on to beat Jaime Arboleda, another highly profiled prospect, and stops him in 2 rounds. April of last year. Then he beats Mercito Gesta. September of last year. And now he gets into the ring with Maxi Hughes to kick off his 2024 campaign. Just look at those names that we just talked about. His opposition has just been getting stiffer and stiffer and stiffer, and he keeps answering the call. He finds a way. These aren't tight, highly contested bouts. He's just trucking past his opposition. He's smothering. He's beating him. He's just throwing, literally, the old phrase of punches and bunches. This is William Zepeda. It's going to be a tough task for Maxi Hughes. He's got to fight from the outside. He needs footwork on his side to come out favorable out of this match. He's going to have to stick and move, counter and move, and get out of the way, because Zepeda's going to close in, and he closes in quick. And once he invades your territory, it's over. He's quick to punch you towards the ropes. And from there, he just unleashes. How he has so much stamina, I don't know. And he looks drained when he goes back to the corner. He's breathing heavy. He goes back to the corner. It's not like he looks fresh, like he's not being affected. He looks tired. He's breathing heavy. He's blowing out air, resetting his lungs. They talk to him in the corner, and then he comes right back and goes 100 miles an hour again. This is going to be an amazing, amazing fight that you don't want to miss, and it's definitely the best card of this weekend. This is going to be in Las Vegas at the Cosmopolitan Hotel. There's really good card overall. Floyd Schofield's going to be back in action against a new signee by Golden Boy, Esteuri Suero, a Dominican fighter who's 13-1 going into this fight. Floyd Schofield, 16-0, and on the very last fight, he stopped his opponent in the first round, just blew him out the water. People were barely setting in to try to figure out a little bit about this fighter that they're hearing about so much, and Schofield had already blown him out the water, just knocked him out in nasty fashion, and everybody got the point, got the idea of this fighter, and want to see more, and he's right back in action. Floyd Schofield's last fight was in December. And here he is 3 months later, right back in action. Esteuri Suero, a Dominican fighter, heavy-handed, was also in action in December. He does have a loss, and his loss is against none other than Starling Castillo, who's also Dominican, and who is also one of those fighters that people got to keep an eye out for. Starling Castillo's 18-1-1 with 13 knockouts. He lost to Odar Erenosian, and he has a draw with Kenny De Leon. Lesser known fighters at the moment. But Erenosian is 14-0 with 7 knockouts. Based out of Miami Beach, originally from Georgia, the country. And he has victories since Starling Castillo over Roger Gutierrez, who was a former champ himself. So Starling Castillo has been involved in some very good fights. He lost a unanimous decision to Erenosian. The draw with Kenny De Leon. Kenny De Leon was going into that fight 14-0. And he continues in his winning ways. Also Dominican fighter, 17-0 and the 1 draw with Castillo. 13 knockouts to his favor. That's Kenny De Leon. And he's 17-0 now. 14-0 when he faced Castillo. So that's the loss. That's the loss that Esteuri Suero has. He has 10 knockouts to his favor of the 13 wins. So he has more than a puncher's chance and very good experience on his side going into this fight with Floyd Schofield. But the stars are behind Floyd Schofield. The upside is behind Floyd Schofield, and he hasn't disappointed yet. And we haven't really seen him tested yet. He is one of those prospects that's just eliminating his competition so quick and in such amazing fashion that it's easy to gauge the type of talent that he is. Or let me fix that. It's difficult to gauge the type of talent that he is because we know what he possesses up to this point, but we haven't seen him tested. So we don't know the resiliency. We don't know the heart, the chin, how it's going to respond when he gets a hard-nosed, grind-out type of fighter in front of him that could handle his punch. Could this be a steady Suero? We don't know. But it's a good test and a good step up in competition for Floyd Schofield, who continues to impress. Eric Priest, another young fighter that Golden Boy has, he's going to be fighting Jose Charles. Tristan Kalkruth, I got to watch Tristan Kalkruth, who's a big 6'5" cruiserweight, young kid who possesses a lot of knockout power in both hands. He's going to be fighting Marquise Weston. I got to witness Tristan Kalkruth in person out in Fort Worth when I was in attendance at the Virgil Ortiz fight. I got to do press for that fight, and that was Virgil Ortiz against Maurice Hooker. Very impressed with the way that he carries himself. Young guy, very mature for his age. He's coming into this fight 12-1, 9 knockouts, trying to get himself back on track. He's coming into this fight with a 4-fight win streak since his lone defeat against Demetrius Banks, and that's the fight where Tristan ended up coming away with an injury. I think his shoulder or his arm, something happened to him, and so he decided to finish the fight out. He did finish the fight out, but he would lose the decision to Demetrius Banks on that night. Since 4-fight win streak, like I said, and he's fighting a 15-2-1 fighter in Marquise Weston. And then the opener is going to be John Iriarte against a fighter by the name of Brian Carguacundo, who's a basic and active, just a basic stand-in type fighter with a 3-5-2 record. In all, 10 fights to his name, Brian Carguacundo. But Joel Iriarte is the newest signee for Golden Boy. And there's a lot of hype behind Iriarte, who's based out of Southern California, because he has an approximate 280 amateur fights to his name. 280 or so is what they've reported that he had in the amateurs. And I believe he amassed something like 17 national titles or 17 titles, something impressive, where this is one of those kids that is one of those kids that has made a lot of noise in the amateurs that often get overlooked because they don't end up with a big promoter. For Iriarte, he just landed one of the biggest promoters out there in Golden Boy. And he's going to make his debut. Usually these young prospects, these amateur standouts, end up going Top Rank's way. Definitely, if you look at Top Rank, they usually sign the Olympic standouts, the Olympic champions, Golden Glove champions. But here's one that Golden Boy has around that has managed to sign, another one that he's managed to sign, and And the upside, I'm really interested to see what he's got. It looks like hopefully he doesn't blow out his opponent out the water. And he gets some rounds under him, the professional ranks, because that way we could see what he possesses, his movement. I haven't seen him or seen any tape amateur wise from Iriarte, but the hype is there. A lot of articles on Joe Iriarte, so I'm going to do some homework before and try to prep before tomorrow's fight. And see what he's got, see what I could expect, and see how he transitions from the amateurs over to the pro ranks. This is the card that you need to watch. If anything, just the co-main and the main, Floyd Schofield and definitely Zepeda and Maxi Hughes. That's going to be a fun fight for as long as it lasts. I don't see it going to a unanimous decision. I really don't. I think Zepeda is going to be too much for Maxi Hughes, but the keys to victory for Maxi Hughes is going to be to stay moving and try to avoid fighting on his back foot, which he doesn't tend to do much. He's got to have to stick and move, counter and move, and stay on his bicycle, because Zepeda's going to come in. And if he gives an inch to Zepeda, it's going to be a rough night for Maxi Hughes. It's going to be tough, and it's going to be a good gauge for both fighters to see what we can expect from them come their title fight. This is it. This is the eliminator for two sanctioning bodies, and William Zepeda and Maxi Hughes are also ranked fairly high in the WBC, and I'm sure they would be next in line even for the WBO to be challenging for any of the four major sanctioning body titles, and a Maxi Hughes who already held one of the titles. Not one of the four, but held the IBO that he surrendered by decision to George Kambosos. So he's been in there with good opposition. If anything, better level opposition just with George Kambosos alone than what William Zepeda has experienced to date. Even though he's got Mercito Gesta and he's got Jojo Diaz under his belt and Hector Tanajara, he hasn't been in there with someone who was the undisputed champ, even if it was for a one-time stint, the undisputed champ in George Kambosos, who surrendered the titles and then was not able to get him back again in those two fights against Devin Haney. The experience is there, and Maxi Hughes went toe-to-toe against the former undisputed champ in George Kambosos, surrendered its title, but many feel that he should have walked away with that victory on that night that he faced Kambosos last July. So I'll leave you guys with that. Very, very interesting fight. And the positive is that everybody made weight, so no drama there. And it's going to be a fun night of fights out in Las Vegas. I hope you enjoy them. And plenty more content to come your way. Thank you guys again for all the love. And enjoy your St. Paddy's Day weekend, whatever you may be. Salud. I'll cheers from you from afar. Have yourself a great night.